she has her head turned down, and then she'll look up, and I was like, "What are you doing?" The way I would say it. She's like, "I see eye shine right over there."
A Bigfoot stands up. Well, when they see what it is, they, kind of got excited. Well, and so the Bigfoot was interested in what they were catching, but what it did when it retreated is, rather than go back through the reeds back toward the woods over in this direction, it just went into the wall honing, and the one guy even walked out in his high boots with the light. He says the Bigfoot just laid down, and they saw it walk up on the bank and just walk away, but it was obviously interested in their catch.
The wilderness often feels like a place of freedom, but once night falls, the calm can vanish in an instant. Tonight, we follow 6 chilling encounters, from the shadowed slopes of Mount St. Helens to Missouri forests, New Mexico canyons, and the quiet roads of Whitehall, where massive, intelligent creatures watched, stalked, and disappeared before human eyes. Ordinary nights turn terrifying, leaving only questions. What lurks just beyond the firelight, waiting unseen? Meet the creator behind Mountain Beast Mysteries, a channel dedicated to uncovering the dark legends hidden deep in the wild. Through immersive storytelling and historical accounts, each episode ventures into remote terrain where fact and folklore collide. In this video, the journey leads to Ape Canyon on Mount St. Helens, the site of one of the most chilling Bigfoot encounters ever reported.
Hey everyone, welcome to Mountain Beast Mysteries. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the Ape Canyon incident, one of my favorite Bigfoot stories, and we're kind of continuing the videos I've been making that kind of relate to Mount St. Helens. In the last video I made, we talked about Jim Carter, the skier who really mysteriously vanished in the Mount St. Helens area right there at Ape Canyon. He was never found, not a trace of him at all was found, and it coincidentally happened where this crazy incident happened back in 1924, and we're going to get into it today.
In 1924, a group of miners claimed they were attacked through the night by massive ape-like figures. What happened in that canyon still fuels debate nearly a century later. The isolation of the landscape, the credibility of the witnesses, and the sheer intensity of their claims have cemented the story as a cornerstone of cryptid lore.
They had their own little cabin that they built, and while they were there, they ran into these ape-like creatures, these Sasquatch creatures, creatures that fit the description of Sasquatch perfectly. And they were in for one heck of a night. Just because there is actual, documents that have been dug up by other researchers showing that these guys were actually in that area prospecting, and for some reason, they left all of a sudden. And they had just got there. They weren't there for that long. They weren't working in the area for very long. And something happened one night, and the next day they were like, nope, we're getting out of here. We're moving to a different area. This place is crazy.
Before diving into his own thoughts on the encounter, the story turns to Fred Beck's account. As the summer of 1924 reached its peak, the miners at Ape Canyon were buzzing with excitement over a promising gold strike. The promise of wealth kept them glued to the rugged mountainside, leaving little room for anything else. Fred Beck, however, struggled with a throbbing toothache, wishing he could escape to town for relief. His companion Hank was too consumed by the claim to consider leaving, determined to stay no matter what. The miners settled into their remote cabin for the evening, but the forest outside was far from peaceful. For days, strange sounds had drifted through the trees, low rustlings, heavy footsteps, and noises that seemed almost deliberate. The wilderness felt alive, watching, waiting. And that night, something was stirring closer than ever before. Even the smallest snap of a twig seemed amplified in the heavy mountain air, tightening the unease that hung over the camp. For several nights, the miners were haunted by strange sounds drifting through the canyon, sharp, eerie whistles bouncing from ridge to ridge, and deep rhythmic thumps that sounded like some massive creature beating its chest. One afternoon, Hank led Beck to the spring a short distance from their cabin, rifles at the ready, nerves taut with tension. Then, suddenly, Beck spotted it. A towering, hairy figure partially hidden behind a pine across the small canyon, its massive form moving with deliberate awareness as it shifted cautiously around the tree, watching them with an unsettling intelligence that sent a chill straight through their bones. It did not behave like a startled animal, but like something calculating, studying their every move. Beck caught sight of it, a massive, shadowy figure, its dark hair blending with the forest. It disappeared behind the trees, then re-emerged, running upright down the canyon with astonishing speed. 3 shots rang out, but the creature vanished into the shadows. That night, the miners returned to their sturdy log cabin, agreeing to leave at first light rather than risk being caught in the dark. A cabin that would endure for decades, bearing witness to countless stories before it was finally lost to fire. Inside, every creak of timber and gust of wind against the walls felt like a warning of what might return before dawn. Many who study Bigfoot consider the Ape Canyon encounter one of the most compelling. It unfolded in the shadow of Mount St. Helens, the same rugged terrain where Jim Carter, a skilled skier and outdoorsman, mysteriously vanished while exploring the mountain years later. Some tales from the area stretch the imagination, but the Ape Canyon story stands apart, detailed, well-documented, and never disproven. Newspaper reports, sworn statements, and Beck's own later writings kept the account alive long after the miners had left the mountain behind. For enthusiasts, it remains one of the most unforgettable and chilling Bigfoot encounters ever recorded. If massive, intelligent creatures were capable of circling the miners, evading every shot, and watching from the shadows, what else might still be lurking unseen in the wilds of Mount St. Helens, waiting for the next encounter? Meet Dan, the fearless storyteller behind the YouTube channel Cursed Dan. Renowned for his deep dives into cryptid sightings and the unexplained, Dan doesn't just report stories, he lives them. Tonight, he shares not one, but multiple encounters that blur the line between myth and reality. First, a chilling Bigfoot story from a close friend, so vivid it's hard to dismiss. Then, a personal experience from Dan himself, a moment that left him questioning what really lurks in the shadows. And as he teases a third story, viewers are left wondering, what else might be watching just out of sight?
I have 2 stories for you. Actually, I might have 3. See how we're doing on time. The first one is from an actual close friend of mine, and it's a Bigfoot story. And the second one is actually one of my stories of something that happened to me. So, that being said, let's get into it.
The story begins with Garrett, a curious and adventurous young man with a love for the outdoors, and his family, who had a long-standing tradition of camping each year at the same secluded spot in central Missouri, just outside one of the region's sprawling state forests. Every year, Garrett would head there with his parents, siblings, cousins, and uncle, an entire extended family gathering under canvas tents, far from the comforts of cabins or modern conveniences. What started as a simple, fun-filled escape into nature was about to take an unexpectedly chilling turn.
So, this story starts out with my good friend Garrett. And him and his family had a tradition of camping every year in the same campground. And that's right down in central Illinois, right outside one of the major state forests. He would go down there with him, his mom and dad, his brother, a few cousins, uncle, everyone, the whole gang would go down there.
Garrett wandered along the forest's edge, the crisp air and the quiet of the woods pressing in around him. Then, unexpectedly, his foot caught on something. At first, he shrugged it off as a tree root, common enough in these woods, but a glance around told him something was wrong. The nearest trees were far beyond where they should be, leaving the object beneath him isolated and out of place. He bent down slowly, heart thudding, and saw it. A strange, pale protrusion emerging from the earth, a muted blend of brown and gray, unlike anything he had seen before. Subtle rustling in the underbrush made him freeze, each instinct screaming danger, and a cold draft seemed to creep along his spine, intensifying the eerie feeling that something unseen lurked closer than he could imagine. A shiver ran through him as the peaceful walk he had been enjoying twisted into something far more unnerving, as if the forest itself was watching.
Like he trips over something on the ground. He thinks it's a tree root at first. He's like, oh, I tripped over a tree root. And then he looks, and he notices like the trees from the forest are very, very far away. So he quickly realizes like it's not that. It's not a tree root. And looks down. When he sees sticking out of the ground about this far is, he can't really tell. It's kind of like brownish gray, like light gray kind of. He like looks around, and at first he dismisses it. He's like, whatever, because it's one of those things you stub your toe, you're like, oh.
Garrett leaned back, letting the quiet of the campsite settle around him when an unsettling sound shattered the calm. It came from the dense forest just beyond the tents, a shadowy wall of trees that had always felt alive but harmless. Until now. The noise was like nothing he had ever heard before. Part growl, part howl, deep and guttural, reverberating through the still air. His pulse quickened, every instinct screaming that he was not alone. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if whatever made that sound was watching him, waiting just beyond the tree line.
Garrett's sitting there and he's relaxing. And all of a sudden he hears a noise. And he hears it come from the forest, the big forest that's right by this campsite. He hears it come from the forest and he's like, what is that? It's like a growl, kind of like a howl. It's like tight. He's never heard anything like it before, ever.
They weren't drawn there by an encounter, just by the urge to keep moving, chasing something new, and Garrett never returned, leaving the story shrouded in mystery. At first, it sounded unbelievable, but Garrett wasn't the type to make things up. He had never even heard of Bigfoot before, and yet when the audio clip surfaced later, he knew exactly what it was. The truth is up to you, but for those who know him, it's hard not to believe that what he experienced was real.
I was kind of skeptical, but like Garrett's not the type of person to make that stuff up. He wouldn't just sit there and, just like, oh, I'm going to concoct a story about Bigfoot, especially since he'd never heard that before. And he didn't hear that audio clip until after and identified it immediately. So draw your own conclusions, but maybe I'm biased, but...
This chilling encounter, far from a simple legend, proved that the unknown can be closer and far more real than we think. Garrett never returned, leaving a lingering reminder that some mysteries in the forest are best left undisturbed. Rachel and Tommy, the fearless duo behind their namesake YouTube channel, are no strangers to the unknown. Drawn to the shadows of the night, they seek the truth behind legends that most dismiss, creatures, phenomena, and moments that defy explanation. For them, the wilderness is not just scenery, but a proving ground where belief is tested against experience. Tonight, they return to a place that has haunted their memories, venturing deep into the mountains, arriving at the remote La Junta Canyon near Tres Rios, New Mexico, in the Carson National Forest. While many dismiss Bigfoot as mere legend, Tommy and Rachel trusted their own experiences. They believed in what they had seen and felt, knowing that some truths exist just beyond the edge of disbelief.
We went to a place up in the mountains called La Junta Canyon, and it's up by Tres Rios, New Mexico. It's between Las Vegas and Taos, New Mexico, in the Carson National Forest. A lot of people don't believe in Bigfoot, don't want to believe in Bigfoot, and they have a right to their opinion. They have a right to their feelings about things.
Deep in the mountains, as night swallowed their camp, Tommy and Rachel were jolted awake by a sudden, urgent cry from their oldest son. They scrambled through the dark, tangled layers of sleeping bags, unsure what had stirred him. He hadn't been dreaming. Something had caught his attention, something that didn't belong. The fire flickered weakly, shadows dancing across the trees, and for a moment the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Every instinct screamed that they weren't alone, and the weight of the unseen pressed in, leaving the trio tense, uneasy, and utterly aware that the night was far from ordinary. Even the usual chorus of nocturnal insects had fallen strangely silent.
My oldest son just started yelling, Dad, wake up, there's something in the camp. So took me 45 minutes. It felt like trying to get out of a sleeping bag and out of unzipping 45 things. They all kind of got up and asked him what had happened. He said that he was just kind of laying there and wasn't asleep. Looked out towards to see if the fire had died down, and if the fire hadn't died down enough, he was going to get out of the tent and put it out.
As the fire flickered low and shadows stretched across the campsite, tension thickened with every passing second. Their son's voice, tight with fear, broke the silence. He had seen something move, gliding unnaturally between the table and the edge of the firelight. He insisted it wasn't an animal he recognized, not a deer, not a bear, something taller, wrong in its movement. As the forest around them seemed to lean closer, alive with unseen eyes, daring them to confront the presence that had slipped through the shadows, silent, deliberate, and entirely unearthed. As they sat in heavy stillness, Tommy watched Rachel carefully. She would glance down, then quickly lift her eyes again, scanning the darkness with sharp, deliberate focus. Then he saw it. The faint green glow, eye shine, hovering over the open ground where no trees stood for nearly 30 yards.
She turned her eyes down again and then looked back up, and I looked where she was looking, and I saw green eye shine. The way she was looking, there were no trees that way for probably 30 yards. No trees. There was just kind of a flattened off area, and then the river came around, went down back like this, and there was this is important for later, a tree stump had fallen over down this way, and which is probably 10 yards from us.
Every time she looked, the eyes seemed to vanish, as if aware of their gaze, lingering just beyond the firelight, silent, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. It wasn't random movement. It felt measured, controlled, intentional. They could feel it long before it revealed itself. Something was observing them, hidden yet deliberate.
She has her head turned down, and then she'll look up. As we're sitting there talking, she's doing this. I kind of watch her. I don't say anything at first, but she'll look down, then she'd look back up real quick. And I was like, what are you doing? The way I would say it. She's like, I see eye shine right over there. And she said, every time I make eye contact, the eyes close.
In the shadows near a tangle of tree roots, a smaller figure crouched, carefully peering out without moving, perfectly concealed. Across the clearing, a larger, more imposing shape lingered, its presence heavy and deliberate. Every instinct screamed that the forest wasn't empty, that something intelligent, patient, and unseen was studying them. Two figures, two distinct presences, coordinated, perhaps even communicating in ways they couldn't detect.
We were being watched by something. There's not even a doubt in my mind that there was something standing there watching us, and down here something was sitting beside the root ball and was leaning back to see us, and then what it felt like is it had picked a place to hide, like when we started getting up and it couldn't really run off, and it was up in my mind, doesn't mean it's so, but in my mind, right, it was a female sitting down there, and the one over here was a larger male.
He'd seen one dart across an empty road, but some encounters had been far closer, moments that defied explanation. To him, they weren't myths or demons, just intelligent, undiscovered primates, moving silently beyond human understanding. What he saw was real and impossible to forget. And once you see something like that, disbelief is no longer an option. It becomes a memory etched into you.
I've seen one run across the road, and I've had a more personal experience, and I fully believe in them. And what I believe they are undiscovered primates. That's all I think they are. I don't think they're half man, half monkey, or aliens, or I don't even think there's a lot of people think they might be demons. I believe in demons, but I just think they're undiscovered intelligent primates.
Deep in the wilderness, Tommy and Rachel felt eyes on them. Something moved just yards away, another shadow lurking farther down. Faint tracks and flashes of eye shine hinted at more than they could see. In this wild, untamed forest, they were not alone, and whatever shared that darkness with them knew exactly where they were. Exploring with Angelo is back in the infamous Whispering Woman Woods. Bigfoot sightings, strange whispers, and the unknown await. Last time he ventured here alone, things got intense. Now, before heading east to Ottawa, Angelo's back to see what secrets the woods and Mo's new property might reveal.
We're back at what we've been calling the Whispering Woman Woods, aka the Bigfoot Woods, or I don't even know what this place is anymore. Last time I came out here, it was I was out here alone because Frank, I don't think, was with me that time, and we had quite the experience. So I wanted to come back and see what it is that we could capture. This is going to be the last video before I head east towards Ottawa, and got some business to take care of out there. And we're also going to see Mo's new property, what should be.
Fresh tracks cut through the snow, snowshoes or skis, it was hard to tell. A faint sound echoed through the trees, familiar and unsettling. The last time they'd been here, it had been the same. Farther down in the valley near the rushing water, where the slope dropped sharply into shadow, the forest felt alive, watching.
No walking.
It's not, yeah.
You heard that, right?
Yep.
Odd. Last time I was here, I heard pretty much the same thing.
Huh.
But further in. It was weird. It was like down in the valley, kind of where the water is.
Low moans drifted up from deep in the valley, weaving through the snow-laden trees. A sudden knock and a sharp whistle pierced the stillness, leaving an unsettling chill in the air. Snow fell heavier now, blanketing the ground and turning every shadow into something that might be watching.
I was hearing like moans, but it sounded like it was coming down there. Or coming from down there. Woo!
Is that a whistle?
I heard a knock and a whistle.
Yeah.
Someone coming through, or...
He stood still, eyes tracing the shadows of the forest. Out here, Bigfoot feels real, he said. Strange sounds, mysterious tracks, and countless unexplained moments had shifted doubt into belief. After everything he'd seen, the idea wasn't just possible, it was undeniable. In these woods, some mysteries refused to stay hidden. Even the wind seemed to carry intention, swirling in uneasy patterns that rose and fell like distant breathing. The deeper they moved, the more the silence pressed in, thick and deliberate. It felt less like exploring a forest and more like stepping into territory that did not want to be disturbed.
I really do think there is a Bigfoot out here.
Well, it could be.
I just had, like, there's been so many clues. And honestly, I used to think, like, I used to question myself. I'm like, I don't think Bigfoot really is real, but after all the weird incidences, I think Bigfoot is highly plausible.
He kept the thought locked in his mind, unwilling to voice it aloud. The forest around him felt impossibly still, yet alive with hidden motion. Branches cracked in the distance, small twigs snapping under unseen weight. Shadows shifted, playing tricks on his eyes, and every movement seemed deliberate. For a brief, chilling moment, the presence of something enormous, something like Bigfoot, felt unbearably real.
Someone is moving back there.
Yep.
Something's breaking like branches. I don't see anyone. Man, some snow. I want to go back and check, but I also don't.
A strange sound drifted through the trees, sharp and uneven, like something scratching or brushing against bark. It wasn't a crack, a knock, or anything familiar, just wrong. He scanned the shadows, heart quickening, certain they were drawing closer. Somewhere ahead, hidden in the dark, whatever they were tracking waited, just beyond sight. The air was thick with anticipation, and every sound seemed alive.
That was weird. I just heard like a weird... I don't even know what that sound was. Like something scratching or rubbing a tree or something. Not like a knock or a crack or anything, just different.
Low, guttural grunts reverberated through the trees, strange and unplaceable, senses sharp, as a musty, almost metallic odor drifted through the air. Something unseen stirred nearby, moving with deliberate intent. Every crack of a branch and rustle of leaves felt amplified, like the forest itself was alert. The presence was close, too close, and undeniably alive.
Okay, something keeps grunting. I don't know what the it is. Something also smells weird. It legit smells like... Sorry, I know my glove's in the way, but... It smells like... musty. Very strange odor.
He remembered the old lore. Bigfoot supposedly had a taste for apples. Carefully, he searched for a spot, imagining the massive creature reaching for it. He tried to place it higher, but it wouldn't stay, so the apple settled on the ground, a quiet offering to the unseen. With the task done, they began the trek back to base, every shadow and sound keeping the forest alive with possibility.
One thing I was always told is that fruit of choice for Biggie is an apple. So we'll see if this works, I guess. I don't really know where to leave it, but I guess maybe up here. Let's see. I mean, Bigfoot's supposed to be pretty freaking tall, right? So provided this stays, and it does not. That's not going to work.
The half-eaten apple lay on the ground, a silent clue of something unseen. Who could have eaten this? One whispered, curiosity mixing with unease. They scanned the shadows carefully, wondering if the rest had fallen somewhere hidden. In the stillness of the forest, every sound and movement felt alive, each one a reminder that they were not alone. After tracks, strange sounds, and the half-eaten apple, the forest falls silent once more. But the question lingers. What truly moves unseen in Whispering Woman Woods, and will anyone ever know what watches from the shadows? On Small Town Monsters, the most compelling encounters often come from people trained to trust facts over fear. Don Bova, a retired police officer from Canfield, Ohio with years of service, never expected to question what he understood about the woods, yet he claims 3 unexplained encounters in Harrison County near Tappan Lake. The first occurred in early September 2010, while he and his cousin were clearing trails for their 4-wheelers to reach their hunting area. It was routine work in familiar terrain, but as the forest grew unnaturally still, an uneasy realization settled in. They were not alone, and something unseen was watching from the tree line.
I've had 3 encounters with it. They all happened in Harrison County, down near Tappan Lake. Okay, so the first encounter that I had with it was in 2010, in September, the beginning of September. And my cousin and I were clearing paths for our 4-wheelers that we cut down through the woods so we can access the hunting area. And we were clipping the paths for the overgrown foliage that comes over the paths every year.
The forest had been alive with birdsong and movement, until, without warning, it fell completely silent. The sudden stillness was so unnatural that both men stood upright, scanning the woods for the cause. That's when they saw it. Behind a stand of white beech trees stood a towering figure, nearly 8 feet tall, broad and powerfully built. Its head tapered into a cone-like shape, its body covered in thick dark fur several inches long. The face was mostly concealed by hair, not quite ape-like, but matching the classic descriptions of Bigfoot. He estimated it at roughly 350 pounds, shoulders wide and imposing, standing motionless in the trees, watching. What unsettled Don most was not just the creature's size, but its deliberate stillness. In his years on patrol, he had learned to read body language of suspects, of witnesses, even of animals. This presence did not behave like a startled deer or a defensive bear. It held its ground with measured awareness, as if calculating distance and intent. The air felt charged, heavy with the sense of intelligence rather than instinct, and that distinction troubled him deeply.
And the birds were chirping and the wildlife was out, and then all of a sudden it went dead quiet, eerily quiet. And to the point where we both stood up and we were like, what's going on? So we started looking around and we turned around, and behind us was a stand of white beech trees. And behind it was what we are calling Bigfoot. And it was about 8 feet tall, with a cone-shaped head, fur all over its body, about 4 inches of fur. Its face was mostly covered with fur, not like a monkey.
The creature never stepped fully into the open. Instead, part of its enormous frame emerged from behind the trunk, one broad shoulder and the side of its head visible, the rest concealed by the tree as though it understood the value of cover. It remained there, motionless, studying them in heavy silence for nearly half a minute before smoothly repositioning to the other side, maintaining its vantage point. The unspoken confirmation between the two men was immediate. They were witnessing the same impossible sight. After several more tense seconds, the figure abruptly turned and moved with startling speed, traveling parallel to their position at a distance of roughly 50 yards before slipping down into a low, marshy section of forest and vanishing into the dense timber as if it had never been there at all.
So it was on the one side of the tree, so we could just see half of its body, which is its shoulder, and half of its head. So it was kind of peeking out around the tree this way. And it stared at us for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then it switched to the other side of the tree. And my cousin said, "Do you see it?" I said, "I see it." And I said, "What is it?" And he said, "You know what it is." So we watched it for about another 20 seconds, and then it turned this way and ran parallel to us at about 50 yards down into a swampy area, very similar to this right here.
The night began like any other for one of the group's seasoned outdoorsmen, fishing with his brother along a steep riverbank. But as they tossed their catfish onto the bank, a massive figure suddenly emerged from the weeds above, 10 to 12 feet up, looming over them.
There's another incident over on the Walhonding River where a couple guys were night fishing on the Walhonding, and as they were sitting there, they had a couple lanterns in hand. They heard some heavy movement over to the reeds to the right, and they had fish in a bucket and stuff like that. And here they holds the lantern, gets a little closer, and guess what stands up? A Bigfoot stands up.
For a tense, heart-stopping moment, it lingered, seemingly drawn by the fish, before vanishing into the darkness. The encounter left him shaken, certain he had come face to face with something far beyond ordinary wildlife.
Well, when they see what it is, they kind of got excited. Well, and so the Bigfoot was interested in what they were catching, but what it did when it retreated is, rather than go back through the reeds back toward the woods over in this direction, it just went into the Walhonding, and the one guy even walked out in his high boots with the light. He says the Bigfoot just laid down and just did the overhand stroke right across to the other side, and they saw it walk up on the bank and just walk away, but it was obviously interested in their catch.
Reports hint that more than one of these creatures may roam the area. The one they encountered was colossal, towering upright at 8 feet, shoulders broad and imposing, covered head to toe in thick hair. Yet it looked nothing like a known animal or creature. Even the largest black bears they'd seen on camera couldn't compare. Nothing in the natural world matches the sheer size and presence of this being, a silent giant that defies explanation. The true identity of the towering figures in these encounters remains a mystery, leaving Don, and all of us, to question what unknown forces might be silently watching from the edges of the forest. On Animal Planet, the journey begins in Whitehall, the heart of the East Coast Bigfoot story. In this town, one name rises above all others: Paul Bartholomew. A lifelong local and seasoned researcher, Paul has spent decades tracking sightings and interviewing witnesses. For the team, he becomes the essential guide to the history, the hotspots, and the newest reports shaping the mystery today.
If you mention Bigfoot to anyone in Whitehall, they're going to tell you, you got to talk to Paul Bartholomew.
Paul?
Hi, how are you?
Paul's a born and raised Whitehall local, so he can put us on the latest reports, best witnesses. Paul's a great jumping off point for us.
He recalled being just 12 when everything changed. People whispered about strange encounters back then, but many of those reports never reached the public. Yet it all leads back to the first chilling incident on Avery Brothers Road. It was August 24th, 1976. 3 teenagers were making their way along this isolated stretch of road. They thought it would be an ordinary summer night, until something stepped out of the darkness and turned their quiet drive into one of the most terrifying encounters Whitehall had ever seen.
Well, I said coming up to the Adirondacks, you're the first guy we need to come talk to because you've been following this stuff since the 70s, right?
Right, since I was about 12. There was a major incident here and a lot of reports that had gone unreported back then.
But the original big one was right here on Avery Road, the 3 teenagers.
They didn't just catch a glimpse, they saw it clearly. For a moment, everything went silent, as if the entire stretch of forest was holding its breath. Then, instinct hit. They didn't wait to study it. They didn't dare. Tires spit gravel as they tore down the road, racing toward town with the overwhelming certainty that the creature hadn't moved, that it was still standing there in the dark, watching them flee.
It was August 24th, 1976, when 3 teenagers were along this road here.
What's that? I don't know.
And they actually spotted a creature near that telephone pole. And they sped into town.
The Whitehall patrolman later described how he swept his spotlight across the tree line, and the beam caught something. According to the officer, close enough for him to see its massive frame before it vanished into the woods. But this was not the only encounter that night. Several others reported seeing the same figure, though many chose to remain anonymous. Even so, the incident quickly became a landmark case, placing both the creature and the officers involved squarely in the public eye.
The Whitehall patrolman shone a spotlight, and it caused it to run away screaming. The Whitehall patrolman said it came within 40 feet of his car, and there were other sightings made that night. A lot of them are still anonymous because of the ridicule factor with law enforcement. But it became a landmark case because we had a front page story about Bigfoot and law enforcement.
The evidence was undeniable. Eric Miner, known as one of the region's most skilled artists, had taken the eyewitness accounts and transformed them into a chilling reality on paper. Every detail, the height, the posture, the unnerving proportions, was captured with startling accuracy. When the witnesses saw the drawing, a hush fell over the room. Some froze. Others could barely look. The sketch didn't just represent the creature, it brought it back to life, as if the figure that had haunted that roadside night could step out from the shadows and into the room. But the story wasn't over.
In fact, Eric Miner, who's an excellent artist in this area, did a drawing of the creature. Based on the witness descriptions that were supplied to him, this is the creature that he came up with.
Does the witnesses ever look at this and say, this is what I saw?
Yep, I believe that's the closest you're going to get to what the creature looked like.
That is good.
Fantastic.
One of the most notable Bigfoot encounters in Whitehall is the Dan Gordon sighting. At the time, Gordon served as a police officer for the village. One evening, while driving towards South Bay with his partner, they were stopped in their tracks by an unexpected presence. A massive creature stood along the road, its gaze fixed directly on them. Next instant, it vanished, as suddenly as it had appeared. Though the encounter was brief, it left an indelible mark. Decades later, it remains one of the most compelling and widely discussed Bigfoot cases in the region, capturing the attention of both investigators and enthusiasts alike.
My name's Dan Gordon. I'm from Whitehall, New York. 1982, I was a police officer for the village of Whitehall. My partner and I were going towards South Bay, New York. This very large creature stood along the road, looked at us, 1, 2, and was gone.
Matt noticed movement in the distance and alerted his companion. As they focused on the shadowed figure, its presence became undeniable. For a brief moment, it was tempting to dismiss it, but the size and posture suggested something far more unusual, leaving them with a lingering sense of unease. Observers noted how significant impact these animals have on the landscape, transform rivers into meadows, reshaping their environment in ways few other mammals can. Their attention then shifted to a nearby structure. Upon closer inspection, it was confirmed almost without doubt that the dam they were observing had indeed been constructed by a beaver. The question of what or who has been moving through the forests of Whitehall remains unanswered. But one thing is clear: those who have encountered it, from terrified teenagers to seasoned officers, came face to face with something extraordinary, and none of them have any intention of venturing back into those shadows again. On Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot Revealed, meet Mel Scan, an enrolled member at the accommodation and the storyteller behind this unbelievable encounter. Alongside his partner, Mel experienced something that defies explanation, a series of encounters so unusual it left them both stunned. DJ Gillian, who was also present, shared his first-hand account of the encounter, describing the moment with equal awe and excitement. Together, they invite viewers to witness this extraordinary experience, a story that challenges what we think we know about the unseen world.
My name's Mel Scahan, and I'm an enrolled member at the accommodation, and I have an event to share that happened to both me and my partner right here, and it blows my mind when you continue doing this and the type of communications that they want to have with you as you grow with them.
And I'm DJ Gian, and I was part of the encounter and love to share it with you.
As they ventured deeper, 3 of them were present: DJ, Mel, and a third companion. Mel had set strict instructions. If anything out of the ordinary occurred, they were to speak, no matter what. The person who experienced the phenomenon would recount it to the others, and any witnesses could confirm what they saw. There was to be no pointing, no chasing, only a steady, deliberate continuation of their investigation.
There were 3 of us, and DJ here was one of the 3. I was the second, and when we walked, I gave him the instructions. I said, if anything happens, just continue on with our normal voices, and the person that went through the experience just explained to everybody else what happened.
Their first sign of contact came in the form of a sudden wood knock. Moments later, a distant whistle pierced the air from the same direction off to their left, the very source of the initial wood knock.
And so the first communication that we had with them was a wood knock. And so I let them know what I had heard, and we're still walking. And I'm letting them know what I had heard and had asked if anybody else had heard it. And as we continued our walk, then a whistle was heard off in the same direction off to our left. And that was the direction that the wood knot came from as well.
Realizing that something unseen was closely monitoring their every move, they could make out part of the figure hidden behind a tree. Only the left side was visible. Every movement seemed deliberate, almost calculating, as the group held their breath. DJ stood frozen, awestruck by the advanced technology that allowed them to capture this encounter. In that moment, it was clear they were witnessing something far beyond the ordinary.
We're looking at it, and then you could see the head. You could tell it was standing. Part of him was standing behind a tree because we only saw the left side. We saw the head, saw the shoulders, and then saw the hand wrapped around the tree. And so we're looking and looking, and then DJ is like just floored by the technology that we had at that time to be able to have this event.
That night was unlike anything they had ever experienced. Mel saw the figure for the first time, completely alone. DJ, stepping into the dark forest for the very first time, felt every shadow and sound magnified, as if the woods themselves were alive. What unfolded that night would change everything they thought they knew, and it had only just begun. That night, the team split into groups for a bold night hike. Some stayed at camp, while others, including Mel, ventured into the forest to sit quietly, listening for anything unusual. They found a small clearing, surrounded by shadows and the sounds of the night, every rustle and whisper amplifying the tension. At that moment, the forest seemed alive, and they had no idea what was watching them. As they moved deeper into the woods, a sharp, human-like whistle cut through the night. Mel confirmed. Someone else heard it too. The group realized they were being watched. Every shadow and sound now alive with tension. They're just urging them to keep moving, hearts racing with the unknown lurking around them.
And I hear loud, human, pursed lip whistle off to my left-hand side, clear as a bell, exactly what it was. I said, Mel, he goes, yes, whistle off to the left-hand side. I'm like, yes, somebody else heard it. Yeah, and I heard it. And he says, yeah, they're just checking us out. They're letting it know that we're here. Let's keep going.
As DJ swept the thermal scope across the clearing, a sudden burst of heat lit up the screen. Bright, almost unnaturally vibrant. Slowly, the outline became unmistakable. Every detail stood out against the night, the faint glow of eyes. In that moment, it was clear. Something intelligent, something alive, was watching them from the shadows. He had never been one for mystical trinkets or rituals, but the encounter opened his mind to something far stranger. The possibility that these beings possess abilities beyond human comprehension, senses and powers we can't begin to imagine. Could there be forces in the world that operate just beyond our understanding? And if so, what else might be watching silently, just out of sight? Small Town Monsters brings the chilling story of Suzanne Ferrick from Western Holmes County, Ohio. In the dead of night, after weeks trapped inside by a bone-freezing cold, she stepped into the darkness. Bigfoot activity had shadowed her land for years, growing more intense, more haunting. And that night, she hoped to face it, if only for a fleeting moment. The channel is known for uncovering cryptids, folklore, and unexplained phenomena, blending careful research with stories that keep viewers on the edge of their seats.
I was in my house, kind of stuck in the house after a couple weeks because it was so cold and I just had to get out. So at like 11:30 at night, I went outside and it was 5 degrees and dropping. And I just decided for as long as I could stay out there, I was going to listen to some music. And of course, I always had the recorder hanging because the Bigfoot activity had been so fierce for the past couple years before that.
Later that night, the quiet of the snow-covered field was shattered by a presence she could feel before she could see it. From the base of the power line, a massive figure emerged in the deep snow. It wasn't an animal she recognized, nothing that belonged in that forest. Slowly, it shifted, a deliberate, haunting motion that seemed to echo through the still night. Then, without warning, a deafening sound echoed from the hillside nearby, shattering the stillness. The snow, the darkness, the towering presence, it all seemed alive, watching, waiting.
And then all of a sudden I look over and at the bottom of the power line, 100 feet from our house, was a Sasquatch, right like this, looking right at me. And there was no trees next to it or anything. The snow was, probably a foot deep at that point, and it was just a complete outline of a Sasquatch, and it was doing this.
In that frozen moment, the world held its breath, and the terrifying reality of what lurked there became undeniable. A story told by Thomas Shea. One night, a worker at the train yard saw it, an enormous, large figure, step off a boxcar into the glowing yard. Every detail was visible, every movement deliberate. In that instant, the ordinary world vanished, and the impossible became real.
They don't want to be put on TV or nothing, but there was one. We have a train that comes through here. We got a train yard, like where they drop off boxes. And there's this one gentleman, he was working one night, and he said the train had just come in and dropped off some box cars and some cattle cars and stuff. They was empty. So he thought, he goes, he saw this figure come out. And he said, and it was all hairy. He goes, there was light there in this yard. He goes, I saw it clearly. It was hairy. It was at least 8 foot tall.
Ray Gardner shared a theory about the strange sightings that continue to puzzle the region. While not familiar with famous cases, he noted countless reports of creatures suddenly crossing roads or appearing in remote areas. Gardner believes these movements follow ancient patterns. In his view, these beings move almost instinctively, guided by generations of memory, haunting the same routes, unseen yet ever present. It's as if the land itself remembers them, and they are simply following what has always been theirs. One witness refused to call it a Bigfoot, but he knew exactly what it wasn't. The sighting gripped him so strongly that he was determined to follow it. Then, in a shocking moment, he saw it cross the clearing, two massive legs covering the ground in deliberate steps, before vanishing into the shadows, leaving only a haunting question: what had he just seen? Drivers would round a dark, silent curve and freeze. There, in the middle of the road, lay a large figure, motionless under the faint glow of the asphalt. The air felt heavier, the night somehow darker, as if the ordinary world had vanished. Heat, instinct, or something far stranger. No one could be sure what it was doing there. Ray described how these creatures often follow the path of least resistance. They navigate with an almost uncanny awareness, blending into shadows while the world continues, unaware of their presence. And if they can glide through the world so silently, so deliberately, right beneath our very eyes, what other secrets might be lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting, and unseen? Salish Sasquatch presents verified sightings and first-hand encounters of Sasquatch across the Pacific Northwest. In this video, we present a carefully curated list of our most notable guests and memorable encounters, highlighting stories that have resonated most with our audience. We begin with Dean Parker of the Macau tribe in Nebe, Washington, whose insights provide a unique perspective on the region's long-standing Sasquatch traditions.
Welcome to Salish Sasquatch, where we share evidence as well as encounters. I've been wanting to put together this video for a while now. This video is a compilation of our very favorite guests, our favorite encounters, channel favorites, and all of that wrapped into one video. So these are in no particular order, but we will start with Dean Parker of the Macau tribe in Nebe, Washington.
Dean Parker, known as Papado of Nebe, recalls a night that still chills him to this day. Driving back to Skokomish through the dark, empty stretch of Humpt, something appeared on the road. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving with an eerie, unnatural grace. It took 3 deliberate steps across the road and then vanished, swallowed by the darkness, leaving only a haunting silence behind.
All right, my name is Dean Parker. I'm from Nebe, and a lot of people call me Papado. And I'm going to tell you about my encounter with the Sasquatches. My first one was driving back to Skokomish, and we was going through tulips there, and it was during the nighttime, and I come up on the road, and I told Lametta, I said, "See that?" "Yes." "You know what that is?" "Yes, it's a Sasquatch," and it took about 3 steps across the road, and it was...
What began as an ordinary moment quickly turned unsettling. From somewhere in the distance, a sharp whistling sound broke the silence. It didn't fade. It repeated, growing closer each time, deliberate, almost directed. With the wind pressing against his face, the realization set in that whatever was out there was no longer far away. The air felt wrong, and instinct warned that the situation was about to take a dangerous turn.
Then I heard this whistling noise out there in the distance. This is not going to be good. And I kept on hearing whistle, getting a little bit closer, whistling at me, and I knew they were really getting... I was walking.
That moment became one of his most unforgettable experiences, an encounter with not one, but 2 Sasquatches, leaving a lasting impression that would stay with him long after the night ended.
Oh, that was my experience with
Long before he knew the legends of Sasquatch, Johnny grew up in Missouri, a childhood untouched by television and the tales it might have told. When his family moved to Washington State, the dense forests and rugged wilderness became the backdrop for a childhood adventure unlike any other. On one of his first backpacking trips, a dozen kids and a single adult, the stage was unknowingly set for encounters that would change everything he thought he knew about the world around him.
I grew up in Missouri, and I didn't have TV. We didn't have TV when I was a kid, so I didn't know anything about Sasquatch or Bigfoot. And my family moved to Washington State, and one of the first trips I did as a kid was I went on a backpacking trip with, I think there were 12 of us kids and one adult. And
while trekking through the rugged trails of Mount Three Fingers in the Boulder River wilderness, an eerie sound shattered the quiet. Something slammed against a tree with a force that no human could match, rattling the forest with rapid, thunderous blows. Even those who had grown up among these woods felt a shiver run down their spines. The group froze, hearts pounding, as the hair on their arms and the back of their necks prickled with an instinctive, chilling fear.
We were hiking on Mount Three Fingers in the Boulder River wilderness, and something in the woods pounded on a tree right next to us, and it was inhumanly loud sound. No person could have done it, and I think it knocked the number of people in our group on the tree. It was boom, 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 real fast, real loud. And I grew up, playing in the woods, and I never heard anything like that. And, everybody there, we just froze.
Further up the road, two campers emerged, their headlights cutting through the darkness as they made their way down the hill. But something, or someone, was following them. A tall, unnervingly slender figure appeared on the road, moving with an almost unnatural grace. When he pointed it out to his friend, they brushed it off, assuming it was just the campers. But his eyes stayed locked on the figure as it came fully into view, impossible to ignore, and the forest seemed to hold its breath.
So they were coming, the two people that had camped further up the road, they came walking down the hill, they had their headlights on, and they were about over here on my left when I saw a tall figure following them on the road. It was very slender, but very tall. And I remember saying, "Hey, I see something up there." And my buddy who was over there, he said, "Oh yeah, that's the, so-and-so, that's those people that are friends." And I was like, "No, they're over here." And everyone just kind of ignored me. But I watched this figure walk into view.
Sonia approached the encounter with logic, carefully testing every explanation. A bear didn't make sense, as none of the usual warning signs were present, and it didn't feel like a deer, another animal, or even a person in the woods. One final possibility crossed her mind, one she resisted at first: Sasquatch. That unsettling realization, paired with the location and behavior she witnessed, drew her into a mystery she could no longer ignore.
Through and find a provisional hypothesis for what it is you're experiencing. And so I'm like, okay, well, if it was a bear, I would expect these things to occur. Bears are big enough to break branches. Bears would slap the ground with their forepaws, but I would have expected to hear huffing or jaw popping. Yeah. Black bears almost never try to intimidate people, and if they do, they make really obvious bluff charges. You probably would see a bear. I didn't think it was a deer, but I said, okay, well, if it was a deer, here's what I'd expect. Was it a wild cat? Was it a creepy person? And then my final one that I didn't want to even put down was it a squatch?
Sarah Brown is a witness whose account stands out for its clarity and detail. During her encounter, she observed a Sasquatch from a distance that allowed her to study its form, coloration, and movement with unusual precision. Her careful observations and the drawing she later created offer a rare and compelling perspective that adds depth to her experience and credibility to her account.
Until Friday, May 10th, which was actually the day of the Aurora Borealis, I saw a Sasquatch that was standing across a field that was about 200 yards away from us. And what I saw was very two-toned in color. It was similar to like an orangutan red. An orangutan red all over here.
The sighting lasted only seconds. As she spoke, her attention drifted for just a moment, long enough for something across the field to catch her eye. She looked up, locked onto the figure, and then, just as suddenly, it was gone. Like so many Sasquatch encounters, it vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but the lingering question of what had truly been there. This one comes from DMAX UK. and they head out into the Pine Barrens to look into the whole Jersey Devil legend. Now, whether you believe in that story or not, that forest already feels like the kind of place where you wouldn't want to be alone at night. It's endless trees, no city noise, no lights in the distance, just quiet.
It is an amazing view.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, it is just green pine trees all the way in every direction to the horizon. We got our work cut out for us, Jess.
Based on reports, there's a good chance that the so-called Jersey Devil lives somewhere between the Bodine Tavern and this tower. But finding him in this, that's a needle in a haystack.
They start up high, looking out over miles of woods, trying to get a feel for the area. At first, it honestly feels like a normal exploration. They're talking through ideas, pointing things out, just taking it all in. Nothing feels tense yet. It's more curiosity than anything.
Yeah, I mean, in an area that is completely uniform with pine trees, anything that... Jess, you heard that, yeah?
Yeah, I did. What was it?
I have no idea. As it's getting sundown, a lot of birds start to call when they go to roost for the night, so...
That didn't sound like a bird.
There's about 300 species that can be found here, Jess, so...
Do any of those 300 species of bird growl?
I actually have no clue.
But once the sun starts dropping, you can feel a shift. Just that natural moment where daylight leaves and everything looks the same, but feels different. The woods get still, conversations slow down. You start noticing little sounds you would have ignored earlier.
You see anything down that way?
Not seeing anything. Wait. Look at that. Wow.
Oh, check this out.
Are you kidding me? Look at the size of this thing.
It's some sort of building.
Yeah.
I mean, it just keeps going. Look, there's another wall.
They move to a spot that gives them a wide view and decide to stay there through the night. Cameras go up. Different tools come out. It feels controlled at first, like they've done this before and know what they're doing. Then something small interrupts that comfort. A sound. A movement. Big enough to make both of them react. And that's the interesting part. It's not about what the sound was. It's about how fast their tone changes. You can hear that split second where curiosity turns into alertness.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll perch over there.
Good visibility to the tree line.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm gonna go all around the periphery. Have the thermal imaging cameras. We'll shine it up in the trees. I get a heat signature of an animal running around up there, or flying around up there. Maybe it will give us a clue as to what it is that people are seeing when they think it's the Jersey Devil.
I also have the Fox Pro. I can send out some calls and see if we can draw something in.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We just gotta remember though, whatever people are seeing out here, it's scaring the heck out of them. We gotta be extra careful.
Well, yeah, I'm calling the Jersey Devil. Of course I'm gonna be careful. I don't want to get my head ripped off.
All right. Good luck here.
Oh, yeah.
And then now.
You got your walkie?
Later on, after things go quiet again, something passes close. Close enough to get a real reaction, not a staged one. You know that feeling when something surprises you and your body responds before your brain does? It's like that.
Something up here. Come on, what was it? Look at that. I just saw some bats flying by. To see it fly across the night sky with the thermal is amazing because they're really hard to see with just a flashlight. But this thing, they are lighting up. Amazing.
Okay, I've got the night vision camera set up, and I'm ready to send out some calls with the Fox.
They check what they captured, and there's a quick glimpse of something. It doesn't answer anything clearly. It just adds more questions. One of them tries to lean toward a simple explanation. The other isn't fully convinced.
What the heck was that? That was Jess, come on! So what happened?
Something flew right over me.
What the heck? I'm gonna check the thermal camera. Maybe it's still here.
You seeing anything?
Nothing.
And that's what makes this one stick. It's not about seeing a creature standing there in full view. It's about those quick moments that don't line up perfectly, the kind you replay in your head later. Let me ask you something.
And whatever it was, I'm certain it was no bat. Because while I couldn't see it, I could definitely tell it was something extremely large.
I'm just so pissed that it didn't just land on the top of that ledge so that we could get a picture of it.
I don't think it's gonna be that easy, Jess. At the end of a long night, I'm certain of two things. One, something scared the crap out of Jess, and two, there are bats all over these woods. I recorded some of them on my thermal camera. I have to believe that is what Jess encountered out here.
If you were out there in total darkness and something moved that close above you, would you brush it off easily? Or would that moment stay with you long after you left? Sometimes it's not about proving the legend. Sometimes it's just about realizing how different a place feels once the lights are gone.